for 40 Warren's Landing Road.
Okay, let me just.
And that is to the 23rd as well.
Okay.
And Jeff or Ashley, question for you on the agenda.
Yep.
The 88 Pacoma Road, I didn't see that on the agenda. Has that been withdrawn or?
That was continued, I believe, till maybe the first week in September.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yes. We'll see those next time.
Art, do you have a comment?
Yes, the continuance for 40 Warren's Landing would be to the 9th, not the 23rd, if possible, please.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So with that, I know we're a little slow to start today, but I'll just kind of get going. So welcome everybody to the August 26th meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. We are meeting fully remotely. So just a couple of reminders, please make sure to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized so that we can take accurate minutes. And, you know, be careful about screen sharing. I would recommend against it because anything that you screen share may be captured by the broadcast and, you know, made part of the public record. So with that, we will begin tonight's meeting under public meeting, public comment on items not being heard this evening. I'm not sure that we have any public comment at this point. Looks like we do not. So I will go ahead and run through tonight's continuances. So under notices of intent, we have Nantucket Island's Land Bank, island-wide land bank properties. That's continued until October 7th. We have NISDA at 55 Walwinet Road, continued until September 23rd. We have Nantucket Wales End 2 LLC at 43 and 45 Squam Road, continued until September 23rd. And then we have Warren's Landing Nominee Trust at 40 Warren's Landing Road, continued until September 9th. And I believe that is it for our continuances. So we will begin this evening with Auburn Cottage LLC at 46 Easton Street. I believe we have Brian Madden and Don Bracken on for this one.
Francis Fayard, but I have a conflict, so I'm recused from this one.
Okay, and Commissioner Williams is recused. So who would like to speak for the applicants?
I can start off.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
All right, Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. So the based on the feedback we had received at the prior meeting, the proposed new dwelling in the northeastern portion of the property was slid over a few feet to accommodate or improve the wetland scenic views as requested by the commission. I will also say there will be some views improved on the west side of the property with the relocated structures that are currently up against the property line. Based on some commissioner comments, we did proposed we are proposing to expand the knotweed management area and plant that with bayberry, groundsel tree, switchgrass, and seaside goldenrod. And also supplement the coastal dune proposed created coastal dune area with seaside goldenrod as well. I had also submitted some photographs of the crawl space basement foundation as requested, and I believe that addresses the commissioner comments from the last meeting. And I'll turn it over to others if they want to interject or open it up to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Would anybody else like to speak for the applicants before we go to commissioners? Looks like no. So I'll open it up for commissioners' questions or comments. Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through you to Brian and also to Arthur, thank you for taking that into account. And please thank your clients on my behalf.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners' comments? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your letter, one of the things I had requested is a follow-up confirmation of the coastal dune on the western portion of the property, and didn't see any reference to that. Did you have a chance to go to the site and reconfirm those flags?
Sorry, Seth. Yes, we did get that restaked, and I did review it, and I did let Jeff know that has taken place. I believe he swung by, and I'll let him speak.
Yeah, we will, first, through you again, Madam Chair, we did go back out after they reflagged it again and do agree with the delineation that's currently shown.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other commissioners' comments or questions? I know I have had concerns kind of about the basement the whole time, and I guess the photos in some way confirmed my concerns that water is getting in there and essentially it's not, acting as a barrier to water. And I'm worried with the upgrade, it is going to change how water moves through there. And I'm just wondering if you guys would consider putting the existing structure on a pier sort of foundation, given that it's so close to the dune and does seem to be in a very vulnerable area.
That is what is proposed. It is on pier supports with the breakaway panel, so floodwaters will be able to flow through the building, and Don would be able to provide a little bit more intel on that, but it is on pier supports.
Okay, I must have been confused that a basement was going back in there.
Nope, there will be a slab, but it will be an elevated structure on piers for floodwaters to pass through.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
The piers will also be on helical piles, so there won't be, a large excavation required for that type of foundation system.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
Any other commissioners' concerns or comments before we open it to the public? Mark?
Yes, I want some clarity, if I could, on the slab issue. Right now, as I understand this, there's a cellar with a concrete floor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Correct, yes, sunken floor, yeah.
And when you say it'll be on a concrete slab, what I didn't see it. Oh, I didn't look that carefully on the plan to see the elevation of the new. Will it be a new slab, or will you use the existing slab?
It will be a new slab, and the slab will be at grade. So there won't be any depression where the slab is going to go. The water will be able to go through the building, down gradient toward the road.
Thank you.
Any final commissioners' comments at this point before we look to the public? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any public comment on this one? Also no. Do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Applicants, would you like to close?
I'll let Dan speak.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, we're ready to close.
Okay. Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Dave. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Williams recused.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that moves us on to George C. and Diane D. Metcalf at 11 Alliance Lane. And this is represented by Brian Madden and Don Bracken.
And I am recused.
You're recused, okay. with Commissioner Engelborg recused.
So we had continued this one last go around, waiting for a natural heritage determination letter. I did ping them a couple times today. Their 30-day review timeline is actually due tomorrow. So I have not seen any letter. Jeff, I don't know if you've seen anything either. No. So
I unfortunately have not.
yeah, so I think we missed it on day 29. So we will need to request a continuance to the 9th, please. But before I do so, if there's any other questions I can address.
Perfect. Are there any questions or comments about this project from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, I'm assuming there's no public, but give a quick check. No.
Let me check my email one more time before.
I just checked my email too, Brian. I have not gotten it yet. So I very rarely get one early. Very rarely.
Exactly.
So
it could be a good sign though. They wait till the 30 days. They don't deliver bad news on day 30.
that's looking positive. So it looks like we'll continue this one until September 9th, waiting for heritage.
Please.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that moves us on to Hubbard at 28 Dukes Road, represented by Brian Madden.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. And so the proposed project involves the installation of a pool and patio, surrounding patio, outside of the 50-foot buffer zone to vegetated wetlands. There's a isolated vegetated wetland. There's two isolated vegetated wetlands on either side of the driveway that extends off Dukes Road. The proposed pool is within existing lawn areas. We'll have an auto cover. There is a proposed stockade fence along a portion of it just for privacy purposes. And the pool will maintain a 2-foot separation of high groundwater. And the pool equipment is shown outside the 50. Basically, all work is outside the 50-foot buffer zone, and no waivers are required or requested for the project. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah.
Okay, Linda?
Can we put the plan back up again, Jeff? It's coming. Brian, you said it's outside the 50. It's
Yes.
entirely inside the 100, correct?
The pool is, yeah, the spa and portions of the patio are just outside 100 foot, but yeah.
And you updated where the wetlands are because that's awfully wet.
Yep, I was actually just flagging this one in July. So it is a recent wetland delineation.
I'm not comfortable with this pool where it is. I don't know if we have a lot to say between the 50 and the 100, but I'm not predisposed to this for a myriad of reasons, but I don't know. Do we deny things between the 50 and the 100 on a regular basis, or just so long as they're outside the 50?
So we can, applicants are allowed to put structures outside of the 50. So this is not a waiver project. So technically it is allowable under our regulations. But if there are other circumstances we're not maybe aware of, sometimes we look at things a little more closely. Jeff, were you out there to confirm these wetland boundaries?
Yes, we have been out and agree with the delineations that are shown on the plan.
Okay, because it's been awfully dry this summer and I've seen them when it is not dry. I've seen that whole strip, that whole side, going all the way down to what Ed Toole did. And it's wet there and it's wet across the street pretty heavily when it's not as dry as we've had. So does that impact where the delineation is depending on whether we've had enough moisture or not?
So I guess if it's all right, Madam Chair, I'll try to take this one.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so typically when we look at how we're delineating vegetated wetlands, we're kind of looking at three characteristics, Linda. Is we first look at the vegetation that's there and classify it out. And there's a key that the Army Corps of Engineers were the original ones that put out for, whether plants or wetland plants or not wetland plants based upon percentage and those things. So you evaluate your vegetation and you do a plot essentially in the upland area and a plot in the wetland area. And sometimes you got to do them in between to determine that. And then within that same kind of area of that vegetation plot, you then also have to look at the soils. And really on Nantucket, where our vegetation can be a little bit of a, marginal, where you see a lot of things like arrowwood that can go both ways, or bayberry, which can go a little bit of both ways. Soils for us is really critical. So when we're looking at that, we're looking to see if we have, I'll use the fancy words, we have redoxomorphic features within the upper 18 inches of soil. So what we're really looking for is signs that water is present in that upper 18 inches for a good portion of the year. And you see that by, I don't know, I guess I explained it to people who haven't done it before, or my kids to say, like, it looks like little M&Ms that are in the soil, right? That are different colors. So if you have a brown soil, you'll see red spots for where it's, like oxidized iron. You'll see orange, gray, green, all kinds of different colors. You're looking for that. And then the third piece that you're looking for are just other signs of hydrology. So you'll see anything from, water staining on leaves, water staining on sticks, topography. Weirdly enough, in the upper part, kind of in that upper thatch layer, you'll see a lot of red rings around root areas for the oxidation around roots. You look for those, and what you're really looking for is two out of those three things. So the soil especially doesn't change very quickly. In most cases, it's pretty reliable. So that's what allows us to look at it kind of any time of the year. And if we've had drought conditions, we don't typically see a really substantial change to the vegetation or to the soils both. So we feel pretty comfortable even in drier years that we get a pretty good picture of what those wetland boundaries are, knowing that, on the occasional year, you might see, water get past what that wetland boundary would be for a short period of time if it's a, really heavy rainfall year, but it's not reflective on the wetland edge. But I think with the soils data and the plants provided and then going out there, I feel pretty comfortable with the delineation that's on this plan specifically.
Well, I just didn't know if moving it to the other side of the lot would get it further away from the wetlands. And it would appear that that would be the case, but it's outside the 50. I didn't know if we had much control over that.
Thank you, Linda and Jeff, for that explanation. So Ian, I saw your hand, and then Seth.
Oh, I take Linda's point. It reminds me of the pool application for, was it 100 Westchester? Do you remember when the abutters said that it flooded completely all the way where they ended up installing the pool?
Yep.
And we added certain precautions. And I'm certainly not going to second guess Brian or Jeff as to whether it's where the wetland delineation is, but I think we should try and I take Linda's point about whether it could be put further away, although I could see it would make a major difference to how their whole lot is set out. So I hope we could condition it with some of those concerns in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's important to remember that in our protected interests, our protected areas, is the performance standards that matter. So if we have some I guess hesitation about what the pool is going to do in terms of those performance standards outside of the 50-foot buffer, it's important to craft our conditions to reflect those performance standards. But other than that, generally, there's more concern for permitting structure within the 50-foot buffer because it's required to be wavered. So things outside the 50-foot buffer could also be, the commission could look at that and also say we need more conditions here, but it has to match the performance standards we're trying to protect.
Thank you, Seth.
And we would certainly expect the standard pool conditions here on this project.
Thank you.
Well,
Brian. Ian?
And thank you, Madam Chair. If I may observe through you to Brian, it's really at the high point of the lot, isn't it? So if they want to empty it, they're going to have to pump it into a pumping tank.
Yep, already had contemplated that and fully expect if it does need to be drained at any time, that would be a standard condition.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Just one sort of a byproduct of this. Has the HDC approved that location? So are we dealing with a set in stone location here?
Brian?
I'm going to ask Don if he knows the answer.
I believe it has been approved.
Okay.
But I can't say definitively. Usually by the time it gets to us, it's been through HDC.
I
first.
believe there was a big snag at the HDC about moving it. That's why I didn't know where it ended up.
Yeah, so quite frequently, applications will go back and forth between the two boards, and we might have a minor modification if HDC, wasn't set on the location. So that does happen, Linda.
Thank you for that information, and thanks, Jeff, for that explanation. I just noticed some invasive species in there over time, and I didn't know if that's something we dealt with.
Jeff, do you want to take that?
I mean, we certainly encourage, applicants that are coming in for any project, if they want to do invasive species management, we certainly encourage them to take that on. But I also know that that's an expense and a dedication of time that not everyone wants to. But I think we could certainly relay through Brian and Don to their client that if they have an invasive species issue, that we would really like them to take care of it at some point.
Cool.
Yes. Thank you.
I can relay that to the property owner, and it would have to be a multiple property owner effort here because this wetland does extend onto adjacent properties, and so doing it on one individual property is not going to make a dent. But I will relay that to the property owner
Thank you,
for
Brian.
future consideration. Thanks.
Any last questions from commissioners before we move to the public? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any public comment on this one?
We do not.
Do we have everything we would need to close?
Yes, you do.
Okay, Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion to close?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. And that moves us on to Anshia Line Properties LLC at 19 East Creek Road. Looks like this is represented by Paul Santos. Jeff?
I was just going to ask quickly, Paul, which plans would you like up on the screen if you would like them up?
I think the site plan, Jeff. I think we'll start with that.
Okay, just let me know if you'd like the change.
Okay. Are you talking about the architecturals?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll start with the site plan. Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the current property owner. Joe Paul, I believe, is available. Also, he is the current architect from BPC who has shepherded this recently through the HDC, and the building renovation plans have been approved by the HDC, and Joe was instrumental in getting those completed. This property is located at 19 East Creek Road. The application is for the proposed additions to a single-family dwelling, the addition of a pergola, and installation of a patio with associated site work, grading, and landscaping, and also planting of native buffer plantings and a retaining wall replacement. This all occurs within land subject to coastal storm flowage and the buffer zones to a salt marsh and a policy coastal bank. The site plan that you have before you depicts the property. By way of reference, it's an obscure piece of property that's basically hidden from any type of view from a public roadway. But if you're in the harbor or in the creeks, many of you will recognize the property. The property has a little bit of history to it with regard to this commission. If I could just kind of walk briefly through how this property was originally developed, discuss some of the prior applications, and then what's brought us back here today before the current commission. I believe there is at least 3 commissioners that sat on prior applications that went anywhere from 2016 to 2018. I believe that was Ashley, Ian, and David may have had sat in on those prior meetings. The site itself was originally issued an order of conditions in October of 1981. Those conditions were reissued again in 2003, I believe. In April of 1989, the commission issued an order of conditions for the placement of a pier-supported dock that is on the property. That dock is in need of repair. However, that component of the application is not before you tonight. We'll come back with a separate application to deal with the repair of the existing dock. It is licensed through Chapter 91, and it was permitted through the Conservation Commission. In September of 2016, the same applicant that's before you today filed a notice of intent that was subsequently withdrawn. We did receive a DEP file number, went through a number of hearings, and the proposal at that time was to tear down the existing structure, rebuild with a different configuration on the existing property. After that withdrawal, a new application was filed in March of 2018, again by the same applicant. A DEP file number was issued. It was subsequently withdrawn, and at which time the intent was to maintain the existing foundation system of the structure and rebuild the structure itself with regard to height, so forth, and make some modifications to the structure. Both of those applications, the 2016 application and the 2018 application, met with opposition not only from the commission, but from a number of abutters. The abutter to the south of the property, Ken Goldberg, had issues with the application. To the south is Our Island Home. I believe they had some issues with the application, as the intent at that time was to try to raise the height of the structure on the existing property. So what's brought us here tonight is a application which we feel has listened to all the past concerns that were done on the property and addresses some modifications the client would like to make to the property, continued its residential use, and kind of move forward with the property itself being used as a single family home. If I could kind of I'll work my way from, I think, right to left, if you will, on the site plan that's before you. For those of you, I mean, many of you know the piece of property. It's a single family home. It's on a pier foundation. It's on a set of wooden piers. It's elevated. It's actually elevated above the first floor, is in compliance with the current flood zone standards. But it is a pier foundation that's essentially sitting right up against the salt marsh. To the backside of the property, which is the backside of Our Island Home, is essentially a Policy Coastal Bank. So it's actually located below the Policy Coastal Bank, and it's wedged in between the bank itself and the salt marsh. The salt marsh line was delineated by LEC. Brian Madden did the original delineation, and that's the delineation that you currently see on the plan before you. The policy bank was established by topography based on figure 2 in the DEP standards. So the application itself before you is the front deck, which wraps around the front of the existing house. There's a set of stairs to the east building wall. The intent is to remove those stairs and completely contain that deck with the first floor of the existing house. So there'd be no access to that easterly side of the property. We're looking to add 2 small building additions along the back side or on the south side of the dwelling. One along a small bump out in the back side of approximately, I believe it's, bear with me, 2 feet. And then we're adding a small, approximately 10 by 10 elevated mechanical room for mechanical equipment along the southerly face of the building. As we move over to the western side of the dwelling, as you come down East Creek Road, there is a gate entrance. You come into a shell driveway, and the driveway extends to the house itself, and there's currently a garage located along the westerly face of the building. There's a garage door on that one side. So the intent would be to remove that garage door. So no longer you would not have that garage component of the existing structure. And approximately 50 feet, 55 feet or so of that existing shell driveway would be removed. So the driveway length would be reduced. And within that area, that's an existing shell driveway now, we would be adding a proposed pergola to the existing building, a patio area, some plantings in that area to buffer the patio area from the driveway. And there'd be what is currently portion of the existing driveway and walkway would be continue to be a defined walkway that would provide access to the front deck on the property. So within that area would be removing the existing asphalt apron that enters into the driveway, would be removing the shell driveway, there is a timber retaining wall along the back side of the property. That would be replaced with a more permanent pen fieldstone wall area. It would be a similar retaining wall, but just we'd be removing the timber component of it. We'd provide some additional native plantings along the slope between the property and our island home. There is an existing turnaround on the property when you come in that actually encroaches onto the town of Nantucket property that then would be rectified, and that turnaround would be removed. There are modifications to the building that are being made. Some of them involve, for the most part, the building height stays exactly the same. There's no change to the building height as was previously proposed. The area where the garage is, the roof line would change slightly, but it would be no higher than the ridge line of the existing structure. Previously, the intent, I believe, was to raise the ridge line approximately, I believe, 7 feet, if you will. And then there'd be some changes to the windows and some of the components of the front or the creek side, north-facing side of the dwelling. Jeff, I think the email that I sent you, Jeff, the first one, which is basically shows existing and proposed, maybe the best one if we could show that component. There is I think it's drawing A 1.0. I think that right there is probably the best one. If that gets blown up, or if you can see that clearly enough, and I'm not really going to only just speak about, I guess, the creek siding face, because I think that's the most important one. The drawing on the left is existing. The drawing on the right is proposed. And if you'll see, they're actually on the far left of the building, they're actually reducing the width of the windows to the left, and then adding a small dormer on the second or half floor of the half story of the house. There actually appears to be.
Looks like Joe wants to say something.
Okay, Joe, why don't you go ahead and take the building then?
Yeah, I'm because what you're looking at here is actually the first submission that was made to the HDC, and there were subsequent revisions that actually reduced the amount of glass that were actually approved. So what's labeled here as proposed is not what was approved. But I have at the ready a comparison of existing. Yeah, this is it, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. So this one is the one. The first PDF was the original submission. The second PDF, which here is labeled proposed, was actually approved. And so you can see that we reduced that large window that was in the former garage area, and now it's 2 double hungs and so forth. I actually did a pane by pane square foot calculation of all the glass area on this. And I have a similar PDF, even though you advised not to screen share. If you don't mind, I just shared this one page with you, which I think might be helpful. Is that okay?
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Everybody see that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. So I did this. I'll just zoom in on this for a second. These are all in square foots. So every pane. So this existing building I have is 181.6 square feet of clear glass area. And I compared it to what we had proposed. We actually have a 13.68 square foot reduction in glass area because this here we had 5 windows, we've got 4. We removed this big window. Over here we had a French door flanked by glass. Here we've got traditional French doors. Roll shutters have been removed. So the net result is that we actually reduced by 13.68 square feet. This side elevation, which is south, it's the right-hand side of the site plan. This faces Goldberg's residence. We've got a 6.7 square foot increase. Creekside, there's actually more glass here in the corner. We've got less. We enlarged this window here in the back. That was quite a small window. I didn't calculate the north side that faces the our island home, just because there's no issue relative to the water or reflection on the water. And then this side is the side that faces the driveway. And as Paul pointed out, we're abandoning the idea of parking a car in here, but they're going to store their outdoor furniture and stuff like in there. And it'll kind of function as it's not a living space. It's not accessible from the interior. It's only accessible from the outside. 11.87 square foot increase. The net is there's a 4.96 square foot increase in glass, most of which happens on the sides. So that's it. I'll stop sharing at this point, but I just didn't want to go too far down the path of that original submission. So there you go.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
So again, why is some of that important? I guess is we talked, I know on the previous applications about the amount of light that was under the proposal when they were doing a tear down and rebuild, the amount of glass that was being proposed, the amount of light, effects on birds and things like that. So I think Joe was sympathetic to that when he took over the project, and obviously in shepherding this through the HDC, I did address, we feel, some of those issues. The site itself, oddly enough, back on the prior applications was mapped under the NHESP mapping. In 2007, when that mapping changed, it was actually taken out of that mapping. However, we did go through the process back in 2016 and did receive on the demo application and the reconstruction of the house, we had received at that time a no adverse effect under the Wetland Protection Act, and would not result in a prohibited take under the Mass Endangered Species Act. Currently, we didn't have to file the project with them as it's now no longer mapped within their jurisdiction. But we did have that letter. It's actually still valid. It was issued in 2016, and that letter would have been valid for a period of 5 years. So it is actually currently, as we speak, still a valid letter from NHESP. We obviously have asked for waivers. The entire site is, within the 25, 50. I mean, the buffer zones here kind of overlap each other. So we have asked for the requisite waivers with regard to what we are proposing. We feel that the current proposal at least makes some modifications to the building for the current owner, but does not necessarily provide anything that's any adverse moving forward with development of the site. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Joe is obviously available too, and we can go from there, I guess. Oh, I would like to actually touch on base 2, because like I said, last time around here, I know we had quite a bit of opposition. I did speak personally with Ken Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg's an attorney. He is located to the south of this property. I shared with him the site plan. I shared with him the architectural plans. And he informed me that I would be able to at least relay to you tonight that he has no issues with this current proposal. And in fact, he's, obviously sees it as a better application with less effect on his particular property than the prior one. We had previously, I believe, had comments from Our Island Home. To my knowledge, I have not seen any correspondence from them regarding this application. The issue with them the last time was the raising of that ridge line by approximately 7 feet. Obviously, with regard to Our Island Home, there's nothing that we're doing that changes their view or anything that may have affected them previously. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to the chair.
Thank you, Paul and Joe, for your presentation. I'll open it up to commissioners for questions or comments. Linda, looks like you have your hand up, and then Seth, I'll go to you.
I was concerned about the increase in fenestration on the creek side and the light scatter. That's why I was looking for the difference in the glazing between the existing and the proposed. So I'm happy to see that figure drop. Happy to see that big large window on the right is gone, because that would have been a huge source of light right on the creeks. I didn't know if anybody had considered non-reflective glass like we did with Don Burns out on Middle Valley, because it was right on the harbor and it was a solid 120 feet of glass. And that worked out very well. So I didn't know how far we go down the road of light scatter into the creeks, light impact at night. I appreciate the presentation by both of them, and I'm much more comforted now than I was before. But I didn't know if that had been even considered or if something we even asked for.
Thank you, Linda. We definitely asked to minimize light, towards the wetlands. So I'm not sure if they would maybe be willing to look into non-reflective glass.
But also that glass also minimized light scatter at all, not just reflecting off so much glass from the sun, but it also, you couldn't really even see the light from inside the building. It was quite an interesting exercise.
Thank you, Linda. Joe?
Yeah, you want me to respond to that? I've never used it, but it sounds compelling if my client, if the option is, or I guess the alternative is to have less glass. I know it took a little coercion to get him to the amount of glass that we're at right now, and I feel like he's comfortable. So if it was a simple change in the glass spec to be able to preserve what he's had HDC approved, I think he'd be open to it. I think you can tell the client's had a paradigm shift over the years, and at this point, he just wants a spot that he can enjoy and in the form that it's in, and I think that he'd be open to it. I don't know what the cost implications are, but he knows that it's going to be an expensive renovation working on this site and working from the inside out. So I would get behind speccing some kind of glass that would satisfy any concerns that the board has.
Thank you. Seth, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have several comments, but I'll speak to the glass first. My training is as an avian ecologist, and I think that any increase in glass in this area is detrimental to bird species. The creeks is one of the most productive habitats for water birds and shorebirds in all of Nantucket, particularly migratory species. And I think that we need to condition this project so that any of the glass areas are required to have approved bird deterrents placed on them so that birds aren't hitting those windows and dying. Collisions among glass is the #1 cause of bird deaths. So I think it's pretty important that we condition that. These things are low cost, effective, and there's many resources on them. There's options that could be applied from within the home, and some options could be applied outside the home, but they're pretty low impact, low cost technologies. And then apart from that, I'm pretty concerned here about the increase in structural area. I understand that this site is highly constrained by the unique nature of it. I totally understand about wanting to renovate the dwelling and use it as it functions today. But I really can't get behind the idea of adding additional structure like pergola and the proposed additions, although they are small. I just don't see that as productive to our wetland resources. I understand possibly the idea of converting what's currently a pervious driveway into a pervious patio. It's a 1-for-1 change in my opinion, but adding things like pergola and additional area, it just isn't productive for the wetland resources. So I think I don't feel comfortable with approving the plan with those additions. If they wanted to take those out and consider, just using the resources they have available and renovating with the house they already have, that would ease my mind. And then also related to the retaining wall, I understand from the photos that the timber is not in a suitable condition. But I think that there's an opportunity here, especially if the Belgian block apron that extends onto the town's property is being removed. There might be an opportunity to reduce the length of that retaining wall into it only really being needed potentially around the house. Get it outside of the 25-foot buffer to the salt marsh. And if you want to maintain privacy where there's currently a wall, using native plantings instead. I think there's a much more ecologically sensitive way to do that, and reducing the length of that wall in that area would be beneficial for the wetland resources.
Thank you, Seth. Those are all really great points. I know that the pergola definitely concerned me a little bit as far as increasing kind of structural space there. And that house does have a fairly large deck. So I kind of felt like the outdoor living space could maybe be contained there if you needed structure. So I appreciate those comments. I also have some questions about construction protocol in this location, because there is not a lot of space to do this renovation. And if that's been thought through at all, like where vehicles are going to park, if you're just going to have a dump truck come in every day, so you're not leaving a dumpster there. This spot is all wetland resource area. So I'm just wondering if you guys have any ideas about that.
I can speak to the prior applications, Ashley, and I know that we had always agreed to provide a construction protocol. The work that was being done previously was a lot more extensive, but I know between my office and Joe's office, a construction protocol or activity plan would be something that we could put together, and that's really, I think, something that we could address any issues that we could anticipate would happen here. I'm sure that putting a condition on that there's a protocol drawing that's to be approved by either the commission or staff is not an issue that would be something that we shouldn't be able to handle.
Okay, because I just feel like it has to be very clear to whoever might do this contracting, so that materials don't end up in the resource area. Because even with a silt fence, if you're up on that deck, stuff's just gonna blow over it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners on this one? Ian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through you to Paul, and so I'm very pleased that they decided not to try to raise the ridge, as you knew how much pushback there was on that. But on the west and the proposed west end elevation, you are adding to the roof mass to a certain extent. And over where the garage is a single structure, it's now a double structure. But all in all, I'm leaning towards approving this because I think it is a distinct improvement about what it might have been. And while I certainly take Seth's point and Ashley's point about the pergola and any addition, I look at the pergola as being more or less an open framework, and please tell me if I'm wrong. So, and I'm pleased that facing the creek, that the glass, the square footage has been reduced. I would hope your client would absolutely install non-reflective glass and take Seth's concerns into account. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Linda, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, just for a brief comment. I agree with Ian. I appreciate Seth's comments. The reason why I would be predisposed towards this is because they're removing some of the hardscaping. I believe they're removing a substantial portion of the driveway, the apron. I believe there's another part of it that's coming off, and I'm back to my non-reflective glass again. So I think that's why I was more predisposed to this. I've always had concerns about whatever happened to this thing, and I was aware of the previous plan to go up, which I was aghast. And I'm glad to see this has sort of stayed within its footprint, reduced the footprint on one side and reduced some of the hardscape. I'm not concerned about the pergola because I agree with Ian's comment about it.
Thank you, Linda. And Dave?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, if you please. I agree wholeheartedly with Ian and Linda. Having been through the previous application, this is a world of difference and a much better project. And I'm all in on this. The reflective glass would be something that would cap it off as a very good project. That's all. Thank you,
Dave. Any other comments or questions from commissioners before we look to the public? Mark?
Yes, a question for Paul, I believe. I appreciate the driveway being reduced. That's important in the resource area that you're working in. And I see there's some plantings between the driveway ending and the proposed patio and pergola, but I was concerned with what the what the surface will be of the patio and underneath the pergola.
Joe, did you spec out on the hardscape application when you were at the HTC, the actual patio itself? I believe we were talking, was it a bluestone? Typical pervious patio, if you will, not pervious, but a typical bluestone patio?
Yeah, it was just called out as a bluestone patio. There wasn't a detail. For instance, my expectation is that it's not set on a slab. We would, how do I put this? I haven't had as detailed a conversation with my client regarding stone size, for instance. So if the board was to tell us maximum stone size of 24 inches by 24 inches with a 2-inch gap between the stone, or whatever the criteria would be, we'd be open to it. Whatever you guys felt like achieved the most permeability. We're not looking to do a toothpick joint with 4 foot by 4 foot slabs of bluestone. So it was just the surface area was defined at the HDC level. It does go underneath the pergola, but we didn't get to a detail about the coursing or the size of the stones or the size of the joints. Does that help?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yep, go ahead, Mark.
No, I appreciate your thoughts, and I think that's a key area to have be a very porous, pervious area there. And just for your information, I support the comments on the non-reflective glass on the side facing the creek. So work on your client with that one if you would.
Thank you, Mark.
I would say it's a non-issue, that it based on what Seth said about the expense, and that it sounds like it's something that's actually applied after the fact and not part of a custom window package, that I'm fine agreeing to it. It makes a lot of sense.
It was a custom window for Don Byrne, so I'll leave it up to you guys.
Okay, Seth, you have a comment?
Yeah, it's actually two separate things. The non-reflective glass is a window spec. What I'm talking about is that's more for light scatter and all that. But even with non-reflective glass, having a big open area causes bird collisions. That is something you would apply after the fact. That part is very low cost, very easy to install, but I would like to see both happen.
Thank you, Seth, for clarifying that. Ian, I thought I saw your hand maybe pop back up.
You did, Madam Chair, because following on Mark's comments and the toothpick, the desire not to have toothpick joints on the bluestone, I was wondering whether it would be sensible to have a catchment basin if that would be necessary. And so whether we would like to see that in a design, or whether we can just depend on that to go forward.
That's a good question, Ian. This area is so tough to even have a catchment basin.
Right.
You're almost in the creek at that point.
Right. It would be in the back, I suppose, but I don't know if it's feasible, really.
Well, I think to Ashley's point, you may have a small, like a yard drain, if you would, with a stone base underneath that patio, and then you'd have some, at least in a non-storm event or some type of material like that, you'd have just a shallow area by which you could be able to direct the water into.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Seth, I thought I saw your hand up, and then Mark will go to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am sensitive to other commissioners saying that this NOI proposal is better than what's come before, but I don't think that's particularly relevant to the discussion at hand. I'm pretty hard and fast on the fact that our job isn't to compare applications against each other. It's to make sure that they meet the performance standards of the protected interests and the resource areas under Conservation Commission jurisdiction. So it's our job to, try to permit something that minimizes impacts as much as possible. So just because it's better doesn't mean it's the best thing we can get. But I think that, for me, the pergola and the added structure does not fit with those performance standards. And I think that the client needs to go back and look at the alternatives analysis for those things. There's a lot of beneficial aspects of this project, but we need to work to make sure we're getting the highest, the optimal submission before approval.
Thank you, Seth. I have to say I agree with you here that although this is better, it still does increase kind of dwelling space. And in this location where, if I remember correctly, the house just kind of snuck through and didn't gain easy approval even on its first time around, that we really shouldn't be expanding structural space, dwelling space, those sorts of things. So I agree with you. Any kind of Mark?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ashley, remind me, ordinarily when an applicant is asking to work in the no-build zone or the 25 to 50-foot no disturb and not no-build zone, there's an offset that they give to us. And is the offset the native planting where the garage driveway was? Is that what we're talking about? I mean, why are we granting a waiver without something to show for it?
I think the waiver was no reasonable alternative for this one. But yes, normally if there's a waiver, there is some sort of offset calculation. And I'm not sure if you guys have done an area calculation for this one.
I can speak to that. Actually, the waiver request was filed under the applicant wishes to apply for this waiver under the premise that the proposed project will not adversely impact the interest identified in the bylaw. And there are no reasonable conditions or alternatives that would allow the project to proceed in compliance with the regulations is what we filed under. If I could just briefly speak to the application. I think this application stands on its own. I think ignoring all the previous applications, this structure is here. We're intending to try to do some upgrades to the project. When we talk about the building area, you're talking about utility mechanical space that, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, is approximately 25 square feet in area. The small bump out addition to the back side of the house is approximately 30 square feet in area. So we're looking at an additional 55 square feet of building area on an existing 1,600 square foot footprint. The pergola is not building area, if you will, under I think either whether it's ground cover or not. A pergola is essentially, to me, I look at it as a glorified fence, quite honestly. Really, it's with the exception of the connection to the house, there are two posts off of the building and then an elevated framework. It's not a roof. It's an open framework. So, I don't particularly see the pergola itself as adding to the building structure itself. It's a component or a landscape feature that's trying to be utilized into the area that we're now putting the patio in. Is the size of the pergola something that maybe we could look at? I guess, Joe, that's something that if that could be made a little bit smaller. But as far as I'm concerned, that the building additions, I think, in order to kind of bring and I'm assuming the mechanical space is needed more so. It's elevated above the flood zone. It's in an area where everything below this building is under the existing pier. It's just basically adding the mechanical space is for the purposes of enhancing the use moving forward of the property. Again, we're looking at 55 square feet of building on the back side of this property, kind of tucked into that existing slope area.
Yeah, there's an existing hot water heater and washer and dryer are actually all in the garage right now below the floodplain. So that those areas that we're trying to capture for mechanical, I guess that square footage, which I think you're right, it's about 50, in packaging the mechanical into the building was one of the challenges of this. And I think that might have been why the previous applicant ended up going vertical. So it's definitely tight bedroom wise, and I mean, excuse me, headroom wise. There's no upper, there is actually a vaulted space existing, which we're capturing as a mechanical space. So we've tried to minimize any footprint or height creep in a way that required us to do these bump outs, and we didn't want to keep the mechanical in the garage obviously below the floodplain. So that's the reason for those elements. And the pergola, I think you're right, it's 4 columns and some cross members. Those cross members could be defined. I mean, we don't want to space them 6 inches apart. Obviously, if we had 6 inches apart versus 30 inches apart, it's going to change the opacity of that, if you will. So it is an open air structure. Is it sacred to the design? You know, I think it's a nice feature. I don't think it's not as critical as the square footage that we're requesting towards our island home to get the mechanical space. I'd say it's going to enhance their experience there, and I don't think it would harm the resource area, but I'm not an expert in that. It is 4 columns. Given that there's a patio underneath it, I don't think if it were to go away, I think the impact is going to be the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it, but at the same time, like when you look at this structure, it's like somebody dropped it in the creeks, you know? So when you're like kayaking through the creeks, you're like, what's this house doing right on the edge? And then you put a pergola in there too, and it's like wetland scenic views, you know, that is part of our purview, and that increase in structure does, you know, make a difference in my mind, in a space that really probably never should have been developed in the first place. So I recognize, you know, an improvement to the homeowner's experience. But at the same time, you know, everybody can see this property from the creeks. And I think it is important to keep that in mind as well, and recognize that human aspect of the pergola might, you know, not be something we want in that wetland area. Seth, I saw your hand pop up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You beat me to half of my comment, but without being argumentative, pergola is defined as structure under our regulation, our regulatory definition. It will negatively impact wetland scenic views. Also potentially could negatively impact the movement of floodwaters, and possibly some of the other interests I'd have to look through and see. But there are impacts there, and the waiver that's being applied for, it's the burden of proof of the applicant to show that there are no reasonable alternatives and that there are no adverse impacts. And I just think that I don't feel comfortable with this until another look is given to see if alternatives are possible. I understand it's a highly constrained site, but there are ways to be creative. I won't claim to be an architect. I understand what you're saying about the mechanical space, but I think again, the burden of proof is on the applicant to show us specifically why those alternatives can't be met and how specifically any adverse impacts will be minimized. So I just think a little bit more analysis is needed here.
Thank you, Seth. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I interpret the no reasonable alternative as sort of a threshold question. For instance, someone can't get access to their property without going through an area that we under our jurisdiction, but to simply expand a property that's already in a troubled area. I think that they already have used the property. And if you allow that reasonable, no reasonable alternative to go forward rationale, they could keep coming back to us ad nauseum and saying, well, I have no other alternative but to go up or out or in. So I'm not convinced that that argument works in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other commissioners' comments or questions before we look to the public?
I have one more comment, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Linda.
I believe you said earlier that you were no longer going to use the garage for a vehicle access. Through you, Madam Chair. I think that was Joe said that, maybe Paul said that, which would eliminate a vehicle going across an area where it can go across now, reducing the impact.
Paul, were you going to take that?
Oh, no, I think there's no question it does. I mean, I think the elimination of the garage is, I think, a positive, at least I think everyone will agree, was a positive component to the application, and the reduction in that shell driveway surface is also. So, I mean, I think that's at least a given that that's a positive component to what we're proposing here.
So, question about the garage, because I used to work on this site years ago for the previous owner. I don't remember them actually parking a car in there, did they? I remember we used to store like garden containers in the garage, but I don't remember an actual vehicle like living in there over the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I've got involved in it actually at the time that the prior owner sold it. So I do know there was material stored in there. There was, I think, maybe some gas. I mean, there's things that come in that flood zone that, whether it's a car or not, there was, maybe storage in that area that potentially with the garage door in a flood situation could have been adverse. But I don't know whether they used the garage at any time or not.
Yeah, I just don't really remember that. Seth?
I think it would be important to condition the use of the storage space to not have chemicals and fuel and additives and things being kept in that space, because again, if, as Paul is saying, if there is a flood, there's a detrimental impact there. So there might not be a car, but there might be who knows what, boat fuel or whatever it is. So just making sure that doesn't get stored there.
Yes, thank you, Seth. That's definitely an important condition. Any kind of last thoughts before we go to the public? Looks like no. Jeff, do we have any comments from the public at this point?
Yes. Sorry, literally the natural heritage determination on 11 lines, and they just corrected. So, but public comments on this are from R.J. Turcotte of the Nantucket Land Council. It says the commission should request a detailed alternatives analysis before allowing more square footage this close to the resource area. It's highly unusual to allow construction or activity within the 25-foot buffer zone to a resource area. What sort of mechanical equipment is being housed? As the salt marsh performance standards are written, specifically number 4, this waiver request cannot be met until more details are provided. Even a small increase in the no-build zone is not permitted under the local bylaw, even if it is more palatable to the commission than a prior NOI, unless there is no reasonable alternative. And then he follows up with crack release to homeowner's guide and info on getting appliances above the flood zone. Pictured in the brochure is a washer and dryer in a garage, link above. So he'll send that in. We'll get that link to everybody.
Thank you, Jeff. So with that, would you guys like to continue and try and get more information for us?
Yes, I'll take it from here, I guess. I mean, I think I do feel there's enough. We've got, a few of the commissioners who are have a positive feeling about the application. But obviously we want everybody to feel good about what we're trying to do here. So yes, I'm happy to continue. and try to, answer the specific concerns of a few of the commissioners. And happy to come back at the next meeting and have another discussion.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So then this would continue until September 9th?
Perfect.
Okay. So we will see you on September 9th. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to amended order of conditions. We have Nestor at 4 East Lincoln Avenue, represented by Don Bracken.
Yes, good evening, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. I'm also here with Brian Madden and Arthur Reed, also representing the owners. This project received an order of conditions back last fall for the relocation of a structure and the building of a new structure. So this amendment is to reduce that main structure by about 350 square feet and propose an in-ground swimming pool. Right now, where it says proposed relocated garage and house, that's currently under construction as we speak. The resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. There are no other resource areas within 100 feet of the property. The pool itself will be at grade with a proposed stone patio around it. And there's a fence around the pool, although this pool has an auto cover. And that kind of sums up the requested amendments. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Don. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Jeff, are there any comments from the public on this one?
Nothing yet.
Okay. Do we have everything we would need to issue the amended order?
Yes.
Is there a motion to issue the amended order?
So moved.
Motion made by Linda. Is there oh, Jeff?
I was just gonna say, because it's an amended order, I might suggest making that motion to issue the amended order with the standard pool conditions.
Yeah, standard pool conditions.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
Yeah, I mean, do we know issues like, 2 feet to groundwater, how pervious this is going to be, the fact that it's in a flood zone? I mean, there's a ton of stuff that sort of wasn't brought up, in the original application.
Have you done soil tests out there to know separation of groundwater?
Well, obviously, it's not a waiver requirement because it's not within 100 feet of a vegetated wetland. We do know that there will be dewatering required. There was some dewatering required for the construction of the garage. And of course, that would be a DPW application that would have to be filed. And included in filing that application would have to be a sign off from the Conservation Commission. So there is a catch basin right in front of the site that has been used and approved for dewatering for this project previously, and also another project going in that's across the street. So we wouldn't anticipate any issues with the dewatering permit with DPW. The groundwater, we did measure the groundwater. It's about 35 inches deep or so. So there will be overall about, I would say, 2.5 feet into the water table for the excavation.
Thank you, Don. Ian, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Don.
All right, so Linda has made a motion to issue the amended order with standard pool conditions. I'm not sure if there's a second. Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Eel.
Aye.
Engelborg.
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding.
Aye.
LaFleur.
Aye.
Williams. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And that moves,
Madam Chairwoman,
yes?
may I just interject quickly? With that 11 Alliance determination letter coming in, is there any opportunity to reopen that? There's a purchase and sale coming up that I think they're looking to close.
I can make a motion to reopen if Madam Chairman will entertain that motion. We can do it at the same meeting. We just can't do it at another meeting.
Right. Jeff, is this something that we can do? I don't know that we've ever done this before since we already continued.
So we didn't have any butter comments that came in or through it. I think as long as someone makes a motion to reopen, you guys could discuss it again.
It's actually a motion to reconsider, I think.
Yeah, it would be to reopen.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Terry?
there was no motion made on it, so there's no motion to rescind. It would be a motion to reopen.
Right, it would be, thank you, Terry.
Correct. Yep.
So Linda, did you just make that motion?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Dave, so by roll vote, Beal,
No.
Engelborg,
Still recused here.
oh, sorry, forgot. Arisman, I, Golding,
Well, isn't there a fact that there's still a day left for a condition from National Heritage?
it
That's
just
all.
came through
came
the meeting.
Oh, it
So,
just came through.
Yeah.
They're working late.
All right. So, sorry, I must have been fast asleep. I beg your pardon. So I say aye.
okay. LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Engelborg recused and was opposed by Commissioner Beal.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we will go back under notices of intent to George C. and Diane D. Metcalf at 11 Alliance Lane. And I guess present what Heritage.
Yeah. So they had, thank you very much again. So under the Wetlands Protection Act review, they state as currently proposed, the project will not adversely affect the actual resource area habitat of state protected rare wildlife species. Under the MESA review, they are requiring a condition for implementation of Northern Harrier Protection Plan to avoid any impacts to Northern Harriers, presumably nesting within the vicinity of the site. That's something I typically have developed for review and approval with Natural Heritage and can easily do that. They're requiring symbolic fencing around the limit of work. The entire limit of work is going to be encircled by erosion control barriers, silt fencing. So that will do the trick. And then they're asking for a compliance report within 30 days of the completion of work. And certainly all those conditions, I think, can be rolled into an order of conditions or simply just referencing the determination letter.
Thank you, Brian. Jeff?
So typically our policy on any time we get a determination letter from Heritage that includes any kinds of conditions, we simply attach the actual determination letter to the order of conditions, primarily because they write really long conditions and I don't want to like cut and paste or have to type them in myself. So we just attach that letter so those conditions would be memorialized through any order.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions from commissioners? No. Jeff, did anything come up from the public on this one?
No.
Okay. So now we do have everything we would need to close. Brian, I know you would like to close, so is there a motion to close? Motion
I'll
made
make
by
that motion. I'll
Dave.
second.
Beat you to it. So motion given to Dave, second to Linda. So by roll vote, Beal.
Madam Chair, I'm concerned that there are people who may have left the meeting that wanted to comment on his application. So I will, I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Arisman, I, Golding.
Well, that hadn't occurred to me. It's unfortunate. And I must say, I wish that, looking how this has been shoehorned in, I wish to God we'd start working and focusing on rewriting some of our regulations, Jeff. I mean, it's really, sorry, Madam Chair. I vote with Mark, no.
Okay, LaFleur.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Okay, so that is a 3-2 closing. So it does have the majority. With myself, Commissioner LaFleur, and Commissioner Williams agreeing to close. Beal and Golding opposed, and Seth recused. So that does close. Mark? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. How many votes do you need to approve something on a 7-person board?
Majority of those sitting.
Yeah, so that was 3 out of the
Not 4,
Five.
or not 4 sitting. There was only, I believe Seth is recused.
Yeah, Seth is recused. So we had 3 out of the 5.
Doesn't pass.
It
Maybe
does,
4.
because it's a simple majority, my understanding. I checked that before.
Jeff, do you have any clarity on that?
I believe it's a simple majority of the city members, as long as you still maintain a quorum of the board. So with Maureen absent and with Seth not participating, that leaves 5 commissioners. That's still above quorum for 7, and it was a majority of the sitting members that were there.
Thank you, Jeff. Arthur?
Yeah, I know exactly where Mark is coming from, because we were involved many years ago in a case involving the planning board where the same issue came up, but there are differences in the statute between this and planning and zoning. So I think that Linda is right, that and Jeff is right, that only a majority of the commissioners sitting is required, and that would apply to Concom and to most other boards that aren't dealing with zoning and planning.
Okay.
So
I relent.
Well, I'm curious, Madam Chair, through you to Arthur. So there is a 2/3 requirement when something is being reconsidered, right? So, but it doesn't fall in this purview?
That's to reopen the first of all, this isn't a reconsideration.
Okay.
Because it was not denied. It was simply a reopening, and that would require only a majority vote.
Okay. Thank you.
I have no participation in this matter, by the way. I'm just acting as a friend of the commission.
Yeah, unpaid legal counsel at this point.
We
Right.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Arthur.
Pro bono.
Arthur, you're hired. Send the bill to Brian Madden.
Yeah, here's $1.
I will.
All right, so it looks like that did close by majority. So thank you for everybody for looking at that a little bit more closely.
Thank you so much, everyone, and apologies for the last minute nature of it.
It happens sometimes. Okay, so that now moves us on in the public meeting to certificates of compliance. We will start with Seth D. and Kim M. White at 47A Westchester Street.
Sorry about that. Sorry, I was on mute. So this was for the construction of the small cottage at 47A Westchester Street. If you remember, it was right there, right as you turn on the driveway before you go back down the meandering driveway to the house. It's that front cottage right up on the street. There was some questions we had about some of the plantings. Some of the plantings, when it was originally submitted, were not in compliance. Those plantings have since been removed and recovered. That's kind of what took us so long, was getting that out and that site restabilized to get it back into compliance. But it is now currently in compliance, and we are recommending that this could be issued with the ongoing condition number 19, that any plantings for screening within the 50-foot buffer zone be required to be native species, because right now there are no plantings for screenings in there. They just preferred to keep it open. but in case they change the law.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions from commissioners? Looks like not. So is there a motion to issue the cert with ongoing condition 19?
There is.
So I give Ian the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, I didn't see who said second. Was that
I
Linda?
did. Yep.
Okay. We've got to get you on camera so I can pick up on this better.
I hate it.
So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on, you're welcome, to AC Blue Shutters LLC at 4 Hulbert Ave.
So this was for the relocation and renovation of two structures. There's two lots. If you guys drive around the eastern Hulbert circle there, that was subdivided, and this is the lot that is closest to MCF's big marsh complex that's there. So it was the pickup elevation of the two structures of renovation. After our site inspection, we feel that it's in compliance, and we're recommending that it can be issued as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions, Ian?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second to issue the cert?
So we move right to it. Second.
Oh, Dave got you. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Freeman at 93 Baxter Road.
So there's two of these here. We'll do them one at a time, just because they're two separate projects, and I just want to get them right. So 93 Baxter Road was the one that came into us as an enforcement for the placement of those core logs and some plantings that were there, if people remember.
Yeah.
So those core logs are installed, those plantings are installed, they've been maintained. They've provided the necessary monitoring reports. They paid the penalty that was included in that order of conditions, and the site's in compliance. And in all honesty, the upper part of that bank there is pretty well vegetated. It's been holding for a while now, without any substantial issues. So we're prepared to recommend that this certificate could be issued. I don't know if Art has anything he wants to add, but that was kind of our assessment of the application.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions from commissioners about this one? It's like, no, I'm impressed that vegetation held, because I really thought there was going to be no chance with how steep that bank is. So nice work to whoever installed that.
It looks good, and there's not even a lot of materials or anything like it. It looks fairly natural, other than the fact that it's planted, and you can still see a little bit of the core netting in a couple spots that was put in. But other than that, I was also surprised how thick it was.
Yeah. So if
We'll
there
see
are,
if it stays.
all right, if there are no questions, is there a motion to issue the cert?
Motion to issue the cert.
Right, motion made by Linda. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to orders of conditions.
No, I believe did we take those two Freeman separately?
No,
Jeff?
we got one more cert,
Yeah,
Ashley.
one more cert for Freeman.
Oh, I guess it's not on my
Yeah, they're two right in a row.
draft. Okay, go ahead,
All right,
Jeff.
so SA 48-2089 was for the relocation of the structure up against the road.
Yeah.
And that, we also would agree that project is in compliance as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions from
Move
commissioners?
to approve.
Second.
Second. So Mark got you on the second.
Yep.
So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to orders of conditions. We have Auburn Cottage at 46 Easton Street.
I'm recused.
Thank you for that reminder. I definitely need it today.
Right, it's going around. So outside of the project description, I have kind of our standard invasive species protocols for conditions 19 through 21. 22 is for the report related to invasive species management. And it also has kind of the caveat that it has to include the edge of the dune to manage any migration of that area. 23 is the regrowth of native species requirement. 25 is one that we had kind of talked about before on this project, where any fertilizers that were going to be used were going to require a soil test for that area to demonstrate that it was a need. 26 is that all exterior lighted be directing away from any resource area, excluding land subject to coastal storm flowage, or else they couldn't put it anywhere. I have the all impervious surface runoff shall be directed to on-site infiltration systems, which they've proposed. The public access to be clearly marked on the street and water side. And then this is one that we talked at length before, so I wanted to include it because I was going through the minutes of the old one, was should the annual reporting show that the coastal dune migrating within 10 feet of the structures, a new notice of intent shall be filed to permit mitigation for the dune migration being obstructed by the dwellings. So just something that if that dune does kind of march landward over time, it's something that brings them back, because we can carry that forward on a certificate of compliance even. It brings them back in to deal with a kind of change in resource area to make sure that they can either mitigate that impact or maybe alter what's existing to allow for the free passage of that dune.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions or amendments to this order? And if not, and I know it might take a minute to read through, but is there a motion to issue as drafted, Seth?
Yeah, amendment to number 20, changing it to what we talked about last time, that any herbicide should be applied by a licensed applicator following the label of the herbicide in accordance with the label instructions.
Just real quick, do you want me to move that because the end of 19 has the or as shown on the label of the specific herbicide? Do you want me to move that from 19 to 20? Or do you want me just to remove 19 and just add the label part to 20?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see that, but I think we wanted to, in my opinion, we wanted to make sure it's by a licensed applicator in accordance with the label, so.
Ian?
Well, I'm wondering then if we took out 19 and just put the quantity and specific type of herbicide used will be reported in writing to the commission on an annual basis. Any herbicide shall be applied by a licensed applicator and applied as directed by the label.
No, well, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, to suggest to Jeff.
Yes,
I like keeping 19 in there because it's specific. And all you could do is, this order permits the use of no greater than 50% glyphosate water-based solution for clip and drip application as shown on the label of the specific herbicide. Or you're saying that because it's radio or equal, all right, I guess that doesn't
You just leave that, just add to 20 as shown on the label.
Yeah,
You know what, why don't, we'll just add the as shown on the label to 20 and we'll just leave 19 alone.
Yeah,
And if it's redundant, it doesn't hurt.
Thank you.
In the future, we maybe can combine those two things together, but for now, it's fine.
Okay, good. Any other amendments? And thank you for catching that one, Seth, because I think it is important to have on, probably all of our permits from now on.
So move to approve as amended.
Okay, so motion made by Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur.
Aye.
Right, so that carries with Commissioner Williams recused. And that moves us on to George C. and Diane D. Metcalf at 11 Alliance Lane. And I know Seth is recused on this one.
Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair, some of these were continued earlier in the meeting. Does that mean we continue them under the order of conditions, or do we go ahead with these when we continued them from the public hearing side?
So if notices of intent were continued, then we would hear the notices next meeting or whenever they were continued to.
Do we go ahead with the orders of conditions now, or do we hold the ones that were continued from the notice of intent?
We wouldn't do orders of conditions until the notices have closed.
Okay, because I believe the next,
We closed 11 Alliance, Linda. That's the one we reopened.
right. Oh, that's right. We reopened that one. The other ones were continued.
Right, so we have 11 Alliance Lane and then we have 28 Dukes Road to go through under our orders.
Yeah, I had it marked, so I gotta change it. Okay.
So for 11 Alliance, this was kind of that site development. We'd obviously include those heritage conditions, and then I just had our basic pool requirements for that project.
Thank you, Jeff. As commissioners are going through, if you see any amendments, please let us know. So if there are no amendments, is there a motion to issue as drafted?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
I recuse myself.
do you recuse or are you opposed to this one?
Well, I was opposed reopening it, so I hate to be opposed to the application. I just don't want to vote on it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, that would be an abstention.
Abstain.
Abstain, thank you. A better word. Thank you, Terry.
Okay, thank you. So Arisman, I, Golding,
I'm a fellow abstainer.
okay. LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Okay, so that has the majority.
Wait a minute, yeah. Oh, no, yeah, you have 3-2.
3-2.
The abstentions count as negative votes.
So that carries then. Thank you, everybody. And that moves us on to Hubbard at 28 Dukes Road.
It was also for a pool. I want to say the order is matched while I'm bringing it up. It's just kind of the standard pool conditions on this one as well.
Madam Chairman, when we talked about the getting rid of invasive species, et cetera, does that ever go into the order of conditions, or is that just something we've suggested to them at the meeting and it doesn't get carried over into any written form?
So that was just a suggestion, wasn't something they agreed to or a requirement of the permit.
Okay.
Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do know there's going to be minimal regrading, but there's going to be some regrading for this project.
Yeah.
And this is where I'd like to start to see some of my conditions I talked about for fill at the last meeting put into place. I think we should require that any regrading either uses fill that already exists on site, or if off-site fill is being brought in, is tested for contamination prior to placed on the site.
Thank you, Seth. That's definitely a good one to keep in our orders.
And I will say, I know I proposed a few ideas last meeting, but this isn't my area of expertise. So if Jeff, as we start to write these more and more, if you have colleagues in other towns who have done anything like this, who have better language, then maybe we can get some better language in the future.
Thank you, Seth.
No, I'll certainly put out the feelers on that, and if he holds steady for 2 seconds, I'll try to at least write something in the short term here.
Madam Chairman, that's what I was worried about before, is the proximity to the 50, and it goes over the hill and goes very steeply down from where they're going to sink these walls for that pool. And if they're going to be excavating up at the top, I remember how difficult it was for them to build the house. They're going to be excavating on top of that 50, where the 50 starts to go down the hill into the wetlands at such a steep angle. I don't think the black silt fence is going to do any good up there without all of it cascading down into the wetlands as they try to excavate. It is so tight at the top of that hill, and I know the site really well, that I still have real concerns about that.
So Jeff, should we require like straw wattles in addition to the silt fence there? Can we do that kind of after the fact?
No, you certainly can. It's a condition of the project.
Would that make you a little bit more comfortable, Linda, to kind of beef up the silt fence?
It would, but I think it's going to require Jeff to perhaps have little visits out there on occasion, because I've seen people dump stuff right off the tops of that hill right into those wetlands.
Well, we are regular silt fence checkers. It's honestly one of our great pet peeves is when they're not installed correctly or maintained. But I will ensure that we do. But I'll add a condition 25 that straw wattles shall be placed at along the silt fence.
Thank you.
I can spell. All right, so we added the 25 that straw wattle shall be installed along the silt fencing. And then to go back to Seth's 24, just put any fill needed for the site needs to come from the site itself, or any fill brought to that site shall be tested for any chemical or biological contamination.
One other thing, Madam Chairman, do we have any control over changing grade so they don't elevate this any further than it already is?
We do in some cases have control. And I mean, if it's going to impact the wetland, yes, but I don't know at this point. I mean, I guess we could specify that nothing can happen outside of the grades already proposed on the plan.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable with that.
So typically for this, for all grading projects, we kind of have a tolerance of, a few inches here or there. I mean, we try to stay under any kind of like half a foot or less for any sort of variation from the record plan to consider something to be in substantial compliance. So without the plan in front of me, let's just say they're permitting the grade to be at elevation 20. If it comes back and is at elevation 24, that would not be in compliance with the permitted plan.
It'd be already built. That's the problem. I just would be comfortable with a condition in there that there's no change in grade.
So
the elevation, put it that way, the elevation.
We've made them go back before when the grade's wrong and redo things. So that has happened before.
Well, it becomes a 6-foot pool instead of a 10-foot pool.
That's their problem to deal with if they're not in compliance.
Okay.
Seth, I saw your hand pop up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Jeff, I do feel strongly about this condition regarding fill, but I don't want us to be overwhelmingly vague or also burdensome on applicants. Biological and chemical contamination is a large field. So I don't know how we can get around that, but is there any type of potential staff review that could happen, or potential target list of contaminants that we could look for. I want this to be instituted, but I don't want it to be very vague.
Let me see if we can.
Sorry.
No. Well, this is why we do this.
Again, I'm an ecologist, not a toxicologist or a soil scientist, but I mentioned before invasive plant material, but I think that there could be a condition having to monitor field areas for a certain amount of years for invasive plants, and if invasive plants are found, removed. But then I think there also is impacts from the chemical side, but I don't really know. That's not my expertise.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate you being so thoughtful about this one too, because it's an important condition.
Second.
I'm still on the.
All right, so I actually had included an invasive species sentence at the end of it before. I just hadn't gotten to it. So I changed it now to read, any fill needed for the site needs to come from the site itself, or any fill brought to the site shall provide a soil test for staff to review. This shall include nutrient content and VOCs at a minimum. Any invasive species found in areas with fill shall be removed.
That sounds good to me.
And I will work on getting something better together for the next time and see if anyone else has tackled that before. But I think that hopefully at least kind of opens the door a little bit.
Yeah. So what I guess the last thing we would consider would we consider like metals contamination, mercury and lead and things like that, or no?
Well, I'll add a heavy metals in there. So nutrient content, heavy metals, and VOCs.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's fine for now. And if you do know of examples in other places where they've delved into this deeper, it would be welcome. But that hits on at least most of my points about fill at this time.
Yeah, I feel like someone somewhere has probably conditioned something like that before. So I'll throw it out to our at least our Cape and Islands conservation agent network to see if anyone's done it, and we'll see. And someone may, if they haven't, have a resource, and I may actually reach out to like UMass or Yukon Extension for their soil service to say, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking. What do you think a condition would look like? And see what they say. I'm sure someone will get enough of it where we may get a little choice to combine 2 or 3 things together into what we're looking for.
Thank you, Ian.
Move to approve as amended on the fly.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Hulbert,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you for everybody's work on that one.
I still don't like the project.
So that moves us on to extension of orders. We have Nantucket Conservation Foundation, Shimo Pond Road.
Yep. So I told Karen and Naomi they didn't need to be here for this one. So this is looking for an extension. This is the Pest House Pond project where they were doing some invasive species management, some in-pond algicide treatments, and some aluminum sulfate treatments. Sorry, I was just blanked out on what it was. They've been working on it and they're continuing monitoring, and they're taking care of like spot treatments here and there. So they're hoping to extend that order for the 3 one-year periods to kind of continue to make sure that they've got that problem, and especially the invasive species, fully knocked out on that pond.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions about this extension? And if not, is there a motion to issue the 3 one-year extensions?
I'll make that motion.
So motion made by Linda. Ian, do you want the second? Oh, you're muted.
Sure.
Okay. So by roll vote, Eel,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Sorry, Madam Chair. I'm not sure they're asking for 3 one-year extensions. I think they might be asking for 2. So could we clarify that?
He's looking.
It says 2023.
Yeah, that'd be 2.
oh, Jeff, you're muted.
Sorry, I said this correct. It was 2023. My math was bad. 2 1
Yeah.
years.
I'll revise my motion to include that.
Okay, and Ian, do you still second?
Begrudgingly.
Okay. Thank you for catching that. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to other business. We have approval of minutes from August 11th and August 12th. Does anybody have any amendments to the minutes? And if not, is there a motion to accept the minutes as drafted?
I'll
Mark?
do that. A second.
Mark, I'm assuming you made that motion. Okay, and Linda gets the second. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye. Thank you, Terry.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye. Thank you, Terry.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
All right, so that carries unanimously, and thank you, Terry, always for the minutes and for helping us out navigating some of this stuff tonight. We'd be lost without you.
Terry is like the town's Robert Rules expert at this point. Goes to so many of these meetings.
Yep. Monitoring reports.
So for those who didn't see it, it kind of came in with the extension request for Pest House Pond from NCF, but always like to acknowledge that they sent it in. So it's interesting to see the progress that they're making.
Yes, definitely. I guess any questions about that would go to you, Jeff.
Yeah, if people want to email them to me later, that's fine, and I can pass them along to Karen and Naomi and get those answered if people have any. If they don't, then no one does.
Yep. Thank you, Jeff. So that moves us on to reports. We have crack.
So, things are hotting up. And I believe through Jeff, I sent the links both to the August 10th Arcadis CRP presentation and the slide presentation for the August 24th meeting. And the August 24th meeting was broken down into 3 parts. And the first was sort of dividing the island up into sections and was really focused on near-term engineering solutions. And so it appeared that there was going to be staggering amounts of sand involved and mostly takes from nearshore sites. And I guess they're going to actually make a calculation at some point for the final report of how much sand is going to be involved. And then the second part was about private property owners and their rights and how to persuade them to take climate sea level rise into consideration. And then the third part, Trevor Johnson, who has sort of the overall, is sort of the manager, talked about bylaws and governance. And I do urge my fellow commissioners to actually watch it. I thought it was, it was really full of information. And, the more input, the better. So I'm sure collectively, there's probably additional advice and insights to be shared with them. So we started at 10 o'clock and I don't believe it's online yet. I assume it will be at some point. So at 11:52 and 11:55, there was a discussion. Trevor mentioned that climate resilience was currently not listed in wetland regulations. And so he had some interesting insights about that, and also suggested looking at some other wetland regulations. Norfolk, Virginia was one, and Arlington, Massachusetts was another one. So there you go.
Thank you, Ian. I was curious. I got through about half of the slide presentation and then kind of ran out of time. The nearshore sand that there may be mining or taking, I was curious if the surfing community is involved at all in this process, because I saw that as being a big problem for those South Shore water sports lovers.
Right. And so, I asked questions like, when they referred to the relic, they called the relic flood shoals to the north of where Smith's Point and Ezra Island connected in 1988. And I don't know if they're actually aware that that all was deposited when it closed. And I suggested they look at Google Maps. And I asked, well, what sort of effect is that going to have on the scallop, scallop fishery, considering that the impact of the Grossman Channel back when they dredged it, anecdotally, it was disastrous for scallops for several years. And so then there was a subject of, were they going to actually make calculations about how much sand was moving down drift, because that was included in most of the modeling. And what did down drift actually mean in terms of impact? And then if they were, as you say, not only the surfing community, but the, the nearshore habitat for fisheries, especially off of Sconset with the cobble there. So it almost raised more questions than it answered. But I found it really interesting, and they seem to be doing a comprehensive job.
Thank you, Ian. We'll wait for more information as I know it's coming.
Yeah.
So that moves us on to CPC.
Thank you. We have met. Ken Bogran is our chairman, and he said, "Get ready to get to work." It was an organizational meeting. It just went over some of our policies, but really just said the work is ahead of us in the next 2.5 months, and get ready to spend some time.
Thank you, Mark.
Just for public edification, Madam Chair, we tend to get not too many, I'm the vice chair of it, but we tend not to get an awful lot of open space requests every year. And we're going to have more money because of the craziness of the real estate market this year. And if anybody knows any open space project they want to put an application in for, spread the word, everybody. We were involved with the removal of the phragmite in the pools in the pond at Hummock Pond in particular. And so there's all kinds, we were involved with Mass Audubon, we were involved with UMass Field Station. We also purchased all that land, helped to purchase all the land out in Nantucket. That was federal government land. So if anybody has any open space, we also do historic preservation and housing. But if anybody has any open space projects, the deadline is September 10th. So spread the word.
Thank you, Linda. Hopefully people will apply for that. NP and EDC is not here tonight. So that moves us on to commissioners' comments. Are there any commissioners' comments?
Another well-run meeting, Madam Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Linda.
Thanks to the HDC. This is great.
Yes. So I apologize if I went off topic earlier, but Jeff, regulations, updates.
Is that a question or is that a want?
It's when the hell are we going to get to it?
So do you see how hard it is to even get meeting space for the SPPF thing? It's like impossible.
To answer your question, Jeff, it sounded like a demand to me, not a question.
I am happy to get to it whenever you guys want to have the time. I know we're trying to like get past some of just get through this stage of SPPF and finish, and then can focus on it some. I'm game whenever you guys are. We'll have to re-advertise the public hearing for it, but whenever you guys are ready, we'll be ready.
Do you have something to send out to us for, preliminary consideration, or have we not thrown enough ideas at you?
No, I think we've had enough, and we have some of those things. If you want, why don't by the end of next week, I'll send out the draft of where we are in what we've done and talked about. It probably is not going to cover everything that people are looking for because we never really got to it. But I'll send out what that looks like, and then we'll decide where we're going to go from there. We'll set up a time to schedule.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So,
Does it make sense to have a separate, Madam Chair, a separate organizational meeting? Because we've done that at the HDC and the planning board to get this stuff done.
Yeah, we would need separate meetings. The problem is there's just not meeting space with the town anymore. So like we'll run into like, there's just no time for the meeting. So we'll have to, I guess, have Jeff send out the initial draft, and then we'll start having to look at all the open dates that the town might have through probably the end of the year to figure out SBPF continued meetings and to get our regulations done. And we'll just have to steal all the open spots that we can.
There may be opportunity too for the regulations. I mean, there's always some attendees, obviously we get people like, Art usually attends, the land council usually attends. So there's kind of a handful of folks, but there may also be an opportunity to do that also as like an all Zoom meeting and just set up, and we can just let people log in and be able to get on. Or, if we start to relax on restrictions as far as that, we may be able to, go back to some degree of, some boards are meeting in person now, but may be able to find a space to have an in-person meeting as well, where we can just kind of spread out and talk about regulations and just let it be filmed. So
that would be great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seth?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to agree. I understand the logistics. I understand the workload. A lot of factors we have to deal with, but this is the most important work that we can do, because putting better regulations into place makes our permitting process easier and stronger in the long run. So I'm willing to, go to special meetings and put the work in because it needs to be done. And I understand about trying to schedule space. When we look at that schedule, we should block out not just one meeting, but 2 or 3 meetings for the next couple of months, and let's get it done. This is something that the conversation started my first year as a commissioner, maybe even before that. And I'm about to be going to my third, or I guess I'm in the 3rd year. So would be good to just get some action done here.
Yeah, I think it's at least 5 years we've been talking about this, and we did take a good hit at it last year and then got derailed again. But by the end of the year, let's have the goal of having it finished and out there. And I think we can hopefully fit that into the schedule. Because we've been needing to update this for very long, and it lets things slide that shouldn't slide. So I appreciate that. I have one comment that I mentioned to Jeff during site visits that I've noticed this summer. So I recently read an article where Stephen Murphy was quoted about beach fires, because I think there had been some big beach bonfires, and somewhere in the article it said Nantucket no longer requires permits for fires on the beach.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh.
And it actually said like small, open wood fires are allowable. And it's interesting because I read that and I thought, wow, I've actually been seeing a lot more like fire pits on the beach this summer than ever before. And I think that we either need to put something in our regulations or speak to the fire chief directly, but I think that is something that needs to be permitted, because there's like charred wood kind of in many spots that you wouldn't want on the beach. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's important. The fire department regulations are quite specific. The fire needs to be contained. It needs to be a cooking fire. So there are regulations that people are supposed to be following, but whether they follow them or not is a separate question. But I think that there's also provisions related to removal and disposal of materials. But I think having an extra layer of permitting for coastal beach projects that we deal with makes sense.
Thank you.
Kind of shocked that they took that out of there.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out when, because all I remember is even for my friends' grills, they needed a permit, and now you don't.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, no, that's not good.
yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up. Are there any more commissioners' comments? We'll move on to administrator staff reports.
Yep, I just got one real quick one, just kind of following up for next week. I'll set that schedule and send it around. Do people have a preference for Wednesday or for Thursday?
So long as it's after, as long as it's 3 o'clock or at 3 o'clock late or later.
Yeah, I was gonna do 4, just
Okay.
to get it started. Thursday, keep the regular day.
Sure.
No preference here.
All right, I'll schedule, everyone said they didn't mind either way, but since I had everyone here, so I'll schedule that continued discussion for SPPF next Thursday at 4.
Thank you, Jeff.
And that's it for me. Thanks for everyone for quick meeting. Oh, last thing I promised. If everyone checks their inbox tomorrow morning by 9, for those who digitally sign, I'll have all of that stuff to everybody to sign. It just takes a little time to make sure that everyone has the correct blanks to fill out. So, but I'll have that to everyone in the morning.
And Jeff, I can either come by in the afternoon or Monday. Just let me know.
So I think if it's easier for you guys, I may just set those out once they get in. I'll send you a text message, Ashley, and I'll leave them down front with Ann Medina. You're welcome to come up with that way. If I'm not here or something's going on, you can at least just pop in and get them. So, or
Okay.
I'll let you know that they're down there if I'm not here.
Yeah, because I prefer to come in.
So,
okay. Well, that sounds like a good plan. And at this point, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a second. Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Benai, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Great. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.